This is Van Vance. You're listening to the Proffitt Report podcast with Doug Proffitt.
Hello, everyone. So glad to have you along right here for the inaugural, the very first edition of the Proffitt Report podcast. By the way, I do want to thank my announcer, the legendary WHAS broadcaster, Van Vance, Van the checks in the mail. Now, this podcast is a mix of interviews and commentaries here locally. I'm very excited to get these started. And by the way, I do welcome all of your feedback. My email address is easy. It's one word, dproffitt. That's DPROFFITT at WHAS11.com. That's right, 2 F's, 2 T's. I'll also be sending each of my guests what I call the last word. Now, that's a set of very specific 5 questions about Louisville that I email my guest 1 week in advance based on my interest in the unique architecture of my hometown, what we've lost, and what remains. My first interview is with Andy Blieden, born and raised here in Louisville. He got his real estate license while he was still in college. In 1997, he then turned his attention and money to one of this city's oldest but smelliest neighborhoods, the place nobody cared about and only drove past quickly. Now he's on top of Louisville's hottest downtown neighborhood. How did he do it? What moved him to take this risk? It's why he is the king of Butchertown. And you hear the trumpets.
Oh, my gosh. The only thing I like about that is it is not an elected position.
You're not the mayor. It's Andy Blieden, by the way, sitting here with me.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for letting me be on the inaugural.
Well, you and I have known each other since our college days, and I'll never forget when I came back to Louisville in 1987. I'd been down in Charleston, South Carolina, where they do save history like you do. And one of the first calls I got to go to lunch was from you. And we went with your brother, and is it Jim Carp?
Yep, Jim Carp, Mark Blieden.
To WW Cousins.
Wow, we were sports. Did we make you pay?
Now, Andy, how many buildings do you own in Butchertown today?
In Butchertown, we have 14 buildings.
And you bought your first one how many years ago?
20 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long.
And you bought an historic building.
Right. And at that time, we were looking for a place to put a manufacturing business I had at the time. And so it was between Butchertown and Algonquin Parkway. And the building we bought in Butchertown that became the Butchertown Market was actually on sale by Caudell Seed. And
it was a seed company.
It was a seed company. And I went through it, and on the 3rd and 4th floor, seeds were sprouting through the floorboards. I mean, I said, do you have to mow the floor? And it was wild. And then in their offices, they had like 20 cubicles in 400 square feet, right? And a guy, my 3rd or 4th time looking at the building, a guy goes, psst, psst, hey, come here. And I went into his office, and the furnace was in his office, and he was sweating. And he said, do you have anybody in your company you dislike? And I said, yeah. He said, put him in here. And, I thought, is this guy self-aware enough to know that he's in the I hate you office, right?
So you were at the time in manufacturing, but that's not what the Butcher Market building is today.
Right.
It's a collection of shops.
Yep. So it's just one of those instances of being flexible when opportunity knocks or the wind blows in a different direction. So this building that was for sale by Caudell Seed, 85,000 square feet, and it was across the street. It had been on the market for almost 2 years. So nobody bought it for 2 years. And then I looked at it. I fell in love with it. I called my dad, Bert, who is the patriarch of our family and started a real estate company in the early 60s. And my brother, Mark, took over the company that Dad started, and he's done a fabulous job, but I always wanted to go off on my own, but I always used Dad as a sounding board. And
Did he go, Andy, you're picking a neighborhood where people can't even sit outside because of the smells. 20 years ago,
right,
nobody would go near Butchertown.
Right. And so I called up Dad and I said, hey, I found this building. And he said, well, tell me about it. He said, does it have heat and air? I said, it doesn't have heat and air. He said, how are the windows? I said, it has 400 windows and they all need to be replaced. He said, how's the parking? I said, there's like 4 parking spots. He said, anything else? I said, it's across the street from a pig slaughterhouse. He said, have you bought it? And I said, yeah. And he said, I love it. Because he was Mr. Positive. And I said, well, what would you have said if I didn't say I bought it? And he said, well, that's a moot point, you know. I love it. We're moving forward.
Did the manufacturing idea just collapse? Is that why you said, I better do something with this building?
Yeah, that's
what were
exactly
you going to manufacture? I've known you for so long.
It was my wife's had family, and it was a very small metal manufacturing company, and we basically got pushed out of business by Walmart, who was our biggest customer. And I have nothing bad to say about Walmart. I honestly don't. They're a great company. We were just small and we couldn't be price competitive, and they outsourced to China.
So you've got this building. How long did it take you to fill it up with tenants?
Well, interesting story. We needed to figure out a way to cash flow the business, the building, pay the mortgage, pay the taxes, pay the insurance, maintain it. So I have my CFO, who's Jack Mathis, and has been an integral part in our success of our real estate company. And he started Work the Metal, which we'll get to. It's a retail company that's sort of the anchor of the Butchertown Market building, but we started leasing out some space, and we ended up getting like 5 tenants. And so we're in there, and one day the fire marshal comes in, and he says, and this is kind of learning on the job for me.
Absolutely.
So the building's sprinkled, right, which is very expensive to do. 5% of the building wasn't sprinkled. So the fire chief goes in there, and he says, if you're 95% sprinkled and 5% not, you're 0% sprinkled. He slaps a red sticker and he says, I'm going to shut you down. And I learned, being a Blieden, never panic. But that's about as close as I was.
So you sprinkled the 5%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do 2 things really well. I have great lawyers and I have great bankers.
So let's get to filling Butchertown Market.
Right.
You get Work the Metal, and then I'm sure you needed other space filled.
Absolutely. So what happened was we started leasing it out about 18 years ago. And this is a tough neighborhood because it was odoriferous.
And nobody else was open in the area at the time. You didn't have coffee shops and restaurants.
No, there was nothing. It was just us, the pig slaughterhouse, and then the stockyards, which made the pig slaughterhouse smell good. Right?
That's right.
And then my ex-wife, Becky, who is a dear friend of mine, I was taking a shower upstairs, and she runs upstairs right after I had bought the Butchertown Market building, and she says, you know, front page news, Stockyard sells to Home of the Innocents. And she says, I just want to apologize because you're really smart, and you obviously knew that these guys were leaving.
No, you didn't.
Right. I had no clue.
Right. But you started to see the trend.
Right.
That was a signal to you that the neighborhood was going to break?
Exactly. And then I've always had a close working relationship with JBS, which runs the plant, Swift, which was bought by JBS. So and they employ over 1,000 people. A lot of the people they employ are first wave immigrants. And they're one of the largest employers in the city. And my philosophy always is let's work together and get along and see what we can do.
So hence the slogan that exists now, keep the butcher in Butchertown.
Right.
You're behind that.
Sure, because they were, we've had butchers in Butchertown since 1830, right? And it's named Butchertown, for people to go, hey, this smells. It's not Rose Petal Town, right? So the people at Swift JBS are really good to work with, and they've really helped me lease the building out and help support that. And they want to make the neighborhood better also.
So let's get your decision then to suddenly buying more buildings and more different kinds of businesses.
Right.
I guess it took how many years did it take Butchertown Market to gel before you said, okay, I'm confident enough. I like this neighborhood.
I liked the neighborhood from day one. I always fell in love with Butchertown ever since I was a little kid.
What's your favorite presidential street? Because all the streets in Butchertown are named after the presidents.
Well,
early presidents.
I bought where the Butchertown grocery is, and I had a restaurant that they wanted to name it Martha on Washington. And they couldn't cook, but boy, they had a good name. But that didn't end up happening.
So that would have been so perfect.
Yeah, but Washington is my favorite street.
Because it's got the church, those great old homes.
Right, and then they have the flowering trees, that the Bradford pears that are the worst trees to have on a street, but they're beautiful for like 3 days. I go down the 3 days, and it's like you're in heaven.
So now you've expanded toward the down Main Street end of Butchertown. 14 businesses. What gave you faith? When did you know Butchertown would come together like it did?
I never knew it would. There's nothing, the only thing that we're good at it, or we do, is you can't win a game you're not playing. And, Wayne Gretzky said, you cannot make a shot you don't take. So we've been unbelievably lucky. We have just been fortuitous that things have broke the way that they have broke, and so many people have located to Butchertown. Butchertown has soul. We don't have any fast food. We don't have any sort of mega corporations. It's all local. It's all mom and pop. It's all kind of funky, quirky, a little bit strange operators. And Louisville does a good job of supporting Louisville.
It was interesting to me because while Nulu with Gil Holland was taking off, Butchertown was sort of slow behind it. And I guess that's because of the stigma of the meatpacking plant. Mm-hmm. But are there any other people making major investments like you in Butchertown right now? Or are you it? You're leading the way?
No, I would say the Eye Care Institute was one of the first companies that really jumped on board, and they've been a driving force. And then there's Joe Heron with Copper and Kings. And he has done, and Joe and Leslie, and they're from South Africa, and they came to Louisville via Minneapolis, and they're marketing geniuses. And so they jumped on board, and that's sort of when our paradigm shift happened. So we've got the Brandy Distillery. We've got Todd Roman in Play, which is a fantastic dance club. He's done an unbelievable job. And we've got Bobby Benjamin with the Butchertown Grocery, and then we have the Tasmans with The Point, and then we have Rick with Bakery Square.
Then voila comes the soccer stadium.
Wow.
What
Holy
did
moly.
you say to yourself when that was announced?
I said to myself that there are very few things that make Andy Blieden look smart. Almost nothing makes me look smart. So it was awesome. It was so exciting because it's such a win-win situation on so many levels, and it is going to be profound for Butchertown. It's just awesome.
Okay, so I always was under the impression that you'd have to get the meat packing plant out of there before the real estate values would go up. Obviously, I was wrong on that. Tell me what is happening to the real estate values in Butchertown right now. If I wanted to go in there and buy a house, What's the difference today that I would pay compared to 5 years ago?
It's way more expensive, which is wild. The only way I could afford that beautiful, historic, Italianate, 85,000 square foot building was that it was across the street from the JBS plant, which is why I was on the market for 2 years. You know, what I always thought with the building is, I asked myself, how much would it cost me if I was going to rebuild this the way it is? And honestly, it would cost like $16 or $17 million, maybe more.
What'd you buy it for?
$575,000.
Oh my gosh. You know,
and that was, but I have to tell you, I was a high bidder for the day.
Yeah.
You know, and people thought I was crazy. I did not have one person, except for my dad, and he was faking it, tell me that that's a good idea.
Well, 20 years ago, Andy, I think a lot of us would have said the high risk. I mean, you're totally
absolutely.
There were a few neighborhoods coming alive 20 years ago, but Butchertown wasn't one of them.
Right, and it was stigmatized. So you have to realize this doesn't happen unless I'm able to get in where I became 100% lease, not because I'm a great lease guy, but it's because it was great space and it was so far below market that these new companies coming in that were just getting started out could easily afford being in the market. And then what happened, and this was accidental, but it happened, it became an incubator for these small businesses. So we had a business like Bourbon Barrel Foods, and they started in 1,000 square feet. Matt Jamie came to me, and he looked like a tennis bum. And he says, do you have any space available? I had like 80,000 square feet available. And the way I would lease to somebody is if you fogged a spoon up. If I put a spoon under your nose and it fogged, I'd lease to you. And if it didn't, I'd lease to you, come to think of it. But so Matt Jamie comes in. He'd just been playing tennis. He looks like a ski bum, kind of long hair, blonde, wearing shorts and a T-shirt. And he says, I'm looking for space. And I said, well, I might have a little available. And he's looking for like 1,300 square feet. And I said, what do you want to do? And he says, I want to microbrew soy sauce in bourbon barrels. And I thought to myself, this is the worst day I've ever had. And I said, that's so weird because we are looking for microbrewers of soy sauce. And he goes, really? And I go, no, not really. I don't even know what that means.
Nobody did at the time. And now he does salts, pepper. I buy his bourbon smoked salts.
He's in Williams-Sonoma. He's been written up in the New York Times.
Garden and Gun, New York Times.
He's been on, Andrew Zimmern's show, and he's been on everything. And now they shoot Secrets of Louisville's chefs there at the market. And the guy's a visionary, and he's a genius at what he does. And he started in 1,300 square feet. And he has over 18,000 square feet now, and we were able to accommodate that growth.
And he was one of your original tenants. Right. After the manufacturing idea fell away, and you decided, I got to get people in here paying rent.
Right. He actually was one of the first tenants that when we sort of went from the manufacturing to have this concept of locally made, handcrafted, boutique, interesting ideas, Louisville-centric, Kentucky-centric. So what the Butchertown Market is my mall. This is, instead of a homogeneous mall, this is what we envision to be 2018, the mall that gets people in and strikes their fancy.
And it probably was, had it existed in the 1800s, it would have been their early mall too.
Absolutely.
Because of the way that building is laid out.
You're exactly right.
So I want to ask you about that. Because my interest in seeing how history can become big business started in the year that I anchored in Charleston before I came back to Louisville. And I noticed with you don't tear down buildings. In fact, you were the guy behind the church across from Jack Fry's, the Holy Grail building. Mm-hmm. That was your building. You took a church and made it this popular restaurant. So have you always been of that vein, of that spirit? I can make this building work without tearing it down?
Sure. But here, there's one really important important clarification. I am powered by the quality and creativity of my tenants. So the Holy Grail was Laurie Beck and Tyler Trotter. You could put a gun to my head and I couldn't open that. Right. But I do know real estate, and I know really interesting real estate. And if you can marry that with the right user, then you're going to be wildly successful. And, I sort of act like a bank because a lot of times these guys don't have any money to put in the tenant improvements. So you have to take a really long-term view. And then, we got the Holy Grail. But the thing that made the Holy Grail was we were able to get the piece of property directly behind it, which was a home. And when we bought that, then they were able to do the Grail Garden. Yes. And then the Grail House. And then it became an icon for Louisville. And I bought that house the first day it was on the market, and the lady was a hoarder. And as I'm walking through, she has 5-foot stacks of Good Housekeeping magazine. And I turned to my friend and I said,
wait a second.
She doesn't crack these open, I don't think. Right? And I paid full price, and because I had to have it. And I've been very lucky because when I have to have a piece of real estate, it seems to magically fall into place.
Because you got the right tenant. Now, so
that's the secret.
And then you also put money into the structure, because historic buildings can be the most expensive to shore back up.
It's like building a ship in a bottle. It's easier to scrape it and to build a new building.
But you haven't done that.
No, I'm a preservationist, but I'm also a capitalist. And sometimes you have to tear stuff down. You just have to, because it can't be saved.
Right.
Or, I look at Joe and Leslie's building on Washington, and they did this unbelievable architectural wonder that's been great for Butchertown, but they had to tear down 50% of the building to do it. But
and what building is that again?
It was it was an old produce company, and it wasn't architecturally significant. It was old.
But a couple of weeks ago, I went through Butchertown. I just decided to walk, and I've noticed a lot on different corners. The brown paper now up in windows.
It's wild. It's a
that
renaissance.
Meaning people are in there.
Right.
What's there's something on that one corner that people are going. Is that a restaurant?
That's going to be Naive, and it's like from what I understand, it's a vegetarian and vegan restaurant, and the people are really nice.
So one thing that struck me a year ago or so, I went over there to take pictures, and out came you. You were over at, I think, Copper and Kings. You and I stood on the corner and we talked for a while. And here comes this guy. I see him 2 blocks away on a bike, and he's looking at us pretty funny. And of course, I think he's going to say, "Hey, Doug, how you doing?" And he says, "Hey, Andy, how things going?" They know you in Butchertown.
Sure.
You're connected to the neighborhood.
Right, and it's a walkable neighborhood, and that's the goal, is to make it walkable. And what's so seismic about the soccer stadium is now we have a landing point for the walking bridge, and we have a place for it to go. But everybody shares values in Butchertown. All the business owners, if you look, we all are into renewable energy. A lot of us have solar panels, rain barrels. We are compassionate. That's one of our goals. We're inclusive, and we feel very strongly about being tolerant and about giving something back, not just purely making money. Doing stuff to make Butchertown better and doing stuff to make Louisville better. And that is a shared value of all the business owners there.
Is it tough to get into Butchertown now?
It's tougher than it was 20 years ago, right? So every 5 years, it, becomes a little bit more challenging, and the entry fee to get into the neighborhood is going up.
So then the cafeteria across from Swift goes up for sale. The family that was at Hall's had owned it for years. And when I covered the strike there years ago, I think before it was Swift, we used to always eat at that cafeteria. All the reporters did,
right?
Because we were there out in the freezing cold,
right?
When that building went up for sale, did you jump on it just like that?
Yeah, again, because I own the lot next to it, so it makes more sense for me to have it than, because the more plottage you can build, the better off you are. And it was worth more to me. The most valuable real estate is what's next to you.
And now it's the pizza place.
Right, Alan and Shelley Rosenberg.
And they said early on they had to ask people to leave at midnight because it was so packed.
They ran out of dough. I'm like, make more dough. You need me to help? I'll make dough. And they're like, don't come in our kitchen ever. So,
and it's still doing well.
It's doing great. He has an unbelievably good product. And that's the thing about Louisville. If you have a great product and, it's a welcoming environment, you're going to do well.
So then you went down and you bought some more buildings down Main Street. One of them looked to me like almost where they stack those cinder blocks, and it's a restaurant now,
right?
An Asian restaurant.
Yeah, it's Pha Ba Lu. It's Vietnamese. So I bought 10 buildings there, and that is my answer to the strip center. That's my strip center.
Mm-hmm. It is. I've pulled in there. I went to that store that sort of like Why Louisville now. What is it?
Yeah,
Louisville.
It's a great store. They have great T-shirts, and next to that is a modern furniture company called Stag and Dough, and then next to that is High Five Donuts, which has a line out the door, and then there's a photography studio, First Light, and then next to that is Red Hot Roasters, and then behind that is Pyro Art Galleries. That is a co-op of 19 artists. And
so you buy these buildings, and the way for Business 101, the way you make the money back is through their rent payments.
Yeah, I haven't taken Business 101. I am so signed up.
But for those of us who are fascinated in how you get older, you're buying older buildings. And you also have to put money more into them after the purchase price.
You know how many partners I have? Zero.
So how do you make the money back?
So because I wouldn't want to do this to partners, because you have real estate makes you look smart if you hold it for a long time. Mm-hmm. Time is your friend, right? And my brother always says, good things happen to good real estate and bad things happen to bad real estate. And so what that means to me is if you're buying in a good area that's gentrifying or on the way up, and you can buy some real estate that has soul, and you're going to look back after you hold it for 5 years and it's going to be worth more than what you paid for it. We try to concentrate in areas because a rising tide lifts all boats.
But when you bought your so-called strip center of those homes on Main in Butchertown, did you have the tenants set when you bought those properties?
No.
Okay. So how long did they sit?
It's smarter if you have the tenants set.
Imagine. How long did they sit empty before you, say, got a tenant like Louisville?
Well, the good news is we have been doing it so long that people know how we do it. So they look at the Holy Grail, and they look at the Grail House, and they look at the Butchertown Grocery, and they look at Work the Metal and Cellar Door and Moss Hill, and they see how we fix our space up. And so we now have a history of how we handle our real estate and what we're able to do to these buildings. So people will come up and say, hey, this is my concept. Louisville came and said, hey, we love Louisville, we love Lexington, we want to do this store, and they had a really good concept, and so it was easy to work with them.
So back to my question, how do you make your money back? Is it
I haven't gotten to the part. I didn't realize you're supposed to make money. I was doing it as a hobby. No, there's two ways, right? So one way is the value of the real estate goes up. So you have how much you bought it for, and then how much you put into it. And then you have what it appraises for, what somebody will buy it for. And if it's worth more, then you've built up equity. And sometimes you can refinance and unlock that equity tax-free to do more projects. The other way is you have these rents coming in, and you have your mortgages and taxes and insurance and maintenance that you have to pay, and if you have more rent coming in than those numbers, then you can positive cash flow and make a living doing it like that.
Now, of the 14 buildings you own, did you sell to any of your tenants, or do you still currently own those buildings? Are they all renting from you?
So I sold the Holy Grail and the Grail House to Laurie and Tyler, and Then I sold the pizza place, Mellow Mushroom.
Mellow Mushroom. You just did that.
And that was an interesting story because that was on a brownfield, and it took me 6 years to buy that property from my first offer to when it finally closed. And again, that was one of those situations where I was buying it, and the guy I was buying it for was going out of business, and he didn't really like me, and I ended up buying the note that he had defaulted on, and then I called the note, and 3 days before we were supposed to close, he went bankrupt.
Wow.
As sort of, hey, take that. And what happened in the time since he went bankrupt to the time it went through probate to the time I actually got to close on it is the Kentucky legislature came out with a brownfield program where I didn't have to clean the property up. The state was going to do it. So again, my wife, Katie, she comes in and she says, "Oh, you're so smart. This is a brilliant buy because of this legislation. So you obviously knew about it." And I was in the shower. Why does this only happen while I'm in the shower?
I got to see Katie more than once a year around Christmas time.
She's the best.
So you're really committed to Butchertown. And do you get any historic tax credits?
Yes.
You do get that?
Yes.
So it's worth buying these older buildings sometimes.
It helps a huge amount, but it's not easy getting the tax credits. So I've had to hire a consultant who is an expert at getting tax credits because I tried to do it myself, and it's like being your own lawyer. It's too complicated. So, but getting the tax credits, I get 20 to 30% of whatever I put in to save the buildings comes back to me in tax credits, and it's a good program.
By the way, how big is Butchertown? It's not very big, is it?
No, it basically goes from Brownsboro Road, Lower Brownsboro, and it starts at Story Avenue, where Brownsboro turns into Story, all the way to where Clay and Main is, where they're building the apartments, to the river, to basically East Main.
It just strikes me, talking about those apartments, that those don't seem like they blend with the neighborhood well. What happened there?
I love those apartments.
You do like them.
I love them. And I love the Bristol Group, and I love Charles Carlisle, who's the head guy there. And he was the pioneer on that stuff. And he came in, and what makes neighborhood great is people that live there. And so he's introducing great apartments for people to live in Butchertown. That's going to be great for every small business that's in there.
So let's talk about your future for Butchertown, how you envision it now expanding. You've got the soccer field coming. You really only have one restaurant, right? Is Butchertown Grocery.
Butchertown Grocery and Fabaloo, which is Vietnamese, and then Butchertown Pizza Hall, and then Lupo, and then
Lupo.
Naive.
Now, the Lupo is brand new. That is in a great 1800s building on Frankfurt Avenue,
right? That has no sidewalk,
and it's pizza.
Right.
Italian. And it got a great review recently.
It's fantastic. Those guys do a good job.
So you're good on restaurants, and
we're going to have more restaurants.
You think coffee shops on the way?
Yeah, we have a coffee shop, Red Hot Roasters.
That's right. And where's that located?
It is at 1007 East Main, and it's great. I mean, it's beautiful. And the cool thing about Butcher Block is it has a shared courtyard, which is like a park, so people can get food and just chill in the back.
So retail, restaurants, amenities seem to be going well. I guess it's the
bars,
the residential side that needs to shore up next.
No, we have a good amount of residential, and there's more coming. There's a lot more coming. The soccer stadium is going to stimulate growth for the area. So we're going to have the soccer stadium. We're probably going to have a couple hotels. We're going to have an office building for a single user that they're going to build on the 40 acres. It's going to be wild.
As far as the inventory of historic homes, that's limited though, isn't it?
Absolutely. But that's one of the things that makes Butchertown good is it's not some sprawling, endless neighborhood that's going to be hard to fix up. It's defined, it's limited. I know every piece of real estate there, but a small developer can still find something to do there. It's not totally gone.
And we should say that compared to 20 years ago, Swift is not emitting what they used to because
Absolutely.
of the strong legal efforts by the neighborhood association of the group.
And I think a good faith effort on JBS's part, where they're really working on eliminating the smell, and they actively want to be a positive force in the neighborhood and give back with charities and donating a lot of money and pork and stuff.
It's interesting how you have to live your life there, though. I'm sure some people, they use their outdoor decks and they sit outside.
Yeah.
They enjoy beautiful days. But I did ask the former owners of Butchertown Grocery, of that building, that restaurant that was in there, the Blind Pig. I said, I don't see any outdoor seating. And it was an honest question.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking. And they said, well, we could have 50 people out here one day. And then if they emit at Swift, they're all going to want to rush inside. And we don't have the space.
Right.
So we don't do any outdoor seating.
Yeah, I think that's changing.
Is that going to change?
I do. I got to tell you, it was odoriferous 20 years ago.
Oh, it was.
It was brutal.
Brutal.
And so if you're in the neighborhood, I mean, I don't even notice stuff. I really don't, because I'm so used to just being down there. Now,
Could be your deodorant too, Andy.
you're assuming I use deodorant. That's a huge assumption. No, but there are some days where I can tell something's going on, and I just make a phone call.
And it works.
So it's Butchertown.
If you were going to tell somebody said to you, Andy, I'm looking at buying this historic home. It's going to be an investment because I've got to put it up. Should I come to Butchertown? I'm a little hesitant because of the image with the meatpacking plant. What would you tell them? How do you sell them?
I don't, I looked 20 years ago and I bought the building, and it's been a fun ride. So you just have to realize it's up to you. And it's Butchertown, and it's going to be what it's going to be. And if you're going there thinking it's not Butchertown with the plant being there, you're going to be upset. And every year it improves. So it's Butchertown. It was it's such a soap opera, and it's so Louisville. And sometimes people just like to, complain about stuff. And I'm not saying that they don't have the right, and I'm not saying that they aren't right, but it's Butchertown.
Well, next to Portland, it is one of our city's oldest neighborhoods. And
right.
If you really want to be in the heart of what it was like in the early days, I mean, young Thomas Edison down the street,
right.
running back and forth, living in that boarding house.
Right.
I mean, it's it.
It's it. And we're lucky because a lot of the real estate is intact. And I love the quirkiness on the real estate. And, where Fabaloo is, again, that's a great example of a company, a restaurant that had a vision for what it wanted to be. That was an old welding shop that had a rusted out 1945 Ford truck in the back where we had to get a crane and lift it out. And it's just so crazy. But I love that building because there's not any square angles. There's nothing 90 degrees. Somebody who had been drinking schnapps built that building. I mean, no doubt about it. They were hammered.
There's one building I want you to buy, and of course you and I have talked about it before because it's right in that area of where your strip mall is, as you call it, and that's, I guess it's it's owned by Edinger now. Is that the name? That's the original building that Pappy Van Winkle walked in as a young man. I mean, when he was in his 18, 19 years old, that was Stitzel.
Right.
The Stitzel distillery company.
Right.
Bourbon.
Right, and that's right on Story, right before it turns into East Main, and that's a beautiful building. And right now, I'd love to buy it, and it's these different families. Like Edinger's been there since 1850.
Wow.
So they've owned that building forever. And then, there's a really cool veterinary building, and the people are really nice. And that's a 1880 building. And so there's stuff that still can be really interesting and fixed up.
Yeah. Julian Van Winkle told me he tried to buy it for the family. And that man who owns it would not sell it. They just
it's America, man. You can sell and you cannot sell, but what's going to happen is there's going to be so many people that want to be in the neighborhood and want to be around that it drives the prices up, and then, people buy stuff. But the main thing is it's a fun place to live, and it's a fun place to work, and it's quirky, and it's Louisville, and it's kind of wacky.
And I will say, occasionally there are home tours. I went on one a couple of years ago. I think the Clifton Neighborhood Association runs it every summer, and they went heavy into Butchertown with one of their home tours one year. They had like 4 homes around each corner, and I went through every one of them. And that's when my eyes were open to the possibility of what's really down here. It was fascinating.
Right. And they're beautiful buildings.
And the views were amazing.
And their backyards are amazing. They're like little slices of serenity, you know, back there, how they do these beautiful gardens, and they're old, and you don't expect it. And you look, and you're looking at downtown. You know, it kind of is just very unusual, but it's one of the things about Louisville that differentiates us is it's still affordable. You can still get something in Louisville that they would kill for in Chicago or New York or, you know, any place like that has some old architecture, because all that stuff is out of sight. You can't afford it, and you can still afford it here.
Well, folks, he is the king of Butchertown, Andy Blieden. I like the crown, by the way, you came in with.
Thank you. That's nice. My Kentucky home. Love you, Kentucky.
How can people reach you? Are you on social media?
Butchertownmarket.com. And I have my email and my phone number, and and I'm always there.
And born and raised here, you're a true Louisville success story.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, I love the group of friends and business associates we have, because we all sort of have shared values, and we all believe in trying to make money, but trying to be socially responsible to make Louisville better. It's a nice group of people. It's not dog eat dog where people are going to stab you in the back.
Well, you've always been fun. You were fun in college.
You were fun in college,
we had
you
a great time.
Yeah.
We had a great time. And you were always full of energy and ideas. And it's interesting how this has come together. But the vision you saw in these great buildings. I mean, somebody could have gone in there, Andy.
Right.
And torn out Butchertown. Think about it. Because nobody would have cared, because they would have said, nobody's going to care about it anyway because of the smells.
Not on my watch.
But think about that. How could one other person could have changed the direction of that in a negative way?
Sure. But that's why you got to step up, and I love it. I love doing it. You're nice to have me on.
Well, and I remember Greg Fisher actually did ask you recently if you were serious about running for mayor, and he was serious when he asked you that question.
That's so scary. I got to tell you, I don't have a closet for my skeletons. I have a warehouse. There's no way, but I also think the mayor's doing a fantastic job. He's been wonderful.
Hey, he got you the soccer stadium.
Oh, thank goodness. That's awesome.
Well, as I said, we're going to end each of these podcasts with the last word. And about a week ago, I sent Andy 5 questions, which I'll also send to all of my guests. Your favorite historic building in Louisville?
You know, I have to say Caden Tower, and it's because
Dutchman's.
So that's
Watterson and Breckenridge.
Right. My brother.
The Doyley Tower.
Right.
Pink.
That's right. And my family bought it in, I think, 82, 84. My brother.
You're the
Mark,
D-E-N and Blieden.
And the K is from the Jim Carp. And so we wanted our name first, but it would have been Blarp. So they wouldn't come for it. But I love that building. We got to work with William Wesley Peters, who was Frank Lloyd Wright's son-in-law, and he came back and did a redesign, helped us bring it up to date, and he was fantastic to work for him. We got to go to Taliesin West, and
Frank Lloyd Wright Homes.
Right. His original studios, and in Scottsdale and in Spring Green, Wisconsin.
What's in that building now?
It's my brother's, headquarters, and it's 100% leased
with Chris at the top.
Yes, Ruth Chris at the top. It's a great building, and then one derby I gave Thomas Monahan and Steve Garvey a private tour, and they Tom Monahan started Domino's, and Steve Garvey, Captain Steak Arms or Beef Heart, or I don't even know, with the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yep.
And they ended up fighting. It was weird. And I was with Stacy Todd.
Well, I love the fact that you picked that as your historic building, because I had forgotten all about it. I drive by it a lot.
Yeah, it's a great building.
Question 2, the architecture style you admire the most in a Louisville neighborhood.
I live in Cherokee Triangle, and I love the different styles. You could have mansions next to duplexes, next to fourplexes, next to a shotgun. You know, it has the diversity of, you know, somebody can rent a small apartment and somebody can have a $3.5 million house and they live in the same neighborhood. So, and I like that old architecture.
Yeah, it's just stunning when you walk around.
It's beautiful, and I love a walking neighborhood.
And I think it's for you, it's infectious because that's the way you operate with business. Number 3, your favorite Louisville street or intersection, one that strikes your eye or curiosity when you see it or come around it.
So I would have to say that's Butchertown Road going towards the city when it turns into Baxter, and boom, you see the bridges.
Oh, give me 5.
Right?
Yeah, I like that. Right. That's one of my favorites.
And it always excites me. It never gets old for me.
I have a great friend who was a photographer for years. He was the chief photographer. His name's Doug Smith.
Sure.
And he and I would drive around town, shoot stories, and we would look for shots. He loved that shot too. And I would watch his back so he could run out in the middle of the street so no cars would mow him down to get the shot of the bridges as they peel off down the hill there.
That is I never get tired of that. It always makes me happy.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Doug and I did that a lot. He'd love that shot. Okay, number 4, your favorite place to walk or hike in this area.
So I rode my bike here. I commute on my bike. And so mine's biking. So I like riding my bike in Butchertown, going across the walking bridge to Jeffersonville, then going to George Rogers Clark Park, especially at night, and then ride my bike back, and you can see downtown lit up, and it's beautiful. And then I like going towards Portland along the river, and looking back at downtown's really cool.
From the western side, looking at downtown. Right. So impressive.
Right. So
it really is cool.
I love it.
The future of Louisville is
really, really, really bright. You know, I see us as having the continuation of sort of an explosion or a renaissance where, you know, the Omni was just built, the soccer stadium's coming, there's, you know, multi-billion dollars worth of new construction going on. We're just hitting, and we're doing it our way. You know, we aren't going to be in Nashville or Cincinnati or a Columbus. We're going to be Louisville.
Thank goodness. We're finally going to quit trying to be Atlanta.
Right.
Look what Asheville became.
Yeah, Asheville. I was just in Asheville.
Yeah.
What a great city, and it reminds me of Louisville.
It's exactly, and it's almost on the same weather plane.
Right.
It's smaller.
Right.
You can get around. I've been going there. We've been going there more than 20 years now. And 20 years ago, Andy, there was one locally owned bookshop in downtown Asheville. Wow. It's still there, but barely nothing else.
You know what they need?
Walgreens had shut down.
You know what they need? A pig slaughterhouse.
Well, listen, I'm going to have you back when we make you the emperor of Butchertown.
No, I don't. They shoot the emperor. I don't want to be the emperor.
Well, thanks to Andy Blieden. And don't forget, you can let me know what you think of this podcast. My email address is dproffitt, that's 2 F's, 2 T's, at WHAS11.com. Hope you're enjoying this podcast. And this has been a presentation of WHAS 11 Media.